That you remember.
Yes.
Even if I forgot about it, my brain's like, remembered this. I'm like, well,
You're
now I
like, no,
do.
now I do. I didn't. All right. So today we're going. Speaking of frustrating situations and whatnot, we're gonna humor and comedy, which sometimes can be incited by frustrating situations or lying awake at night. So, we're going to be talking about specifically humor and comedy and writing. Obviously, there are all sorts of different types of comedy. There's comedy in theater. There's comedy in movies. There's comedy written into comedy sketches. There's all sorts of different things. Granted, they all have similar principles, but I will say it's unique because of the fact that it takes a lot more effort to get a joke to land because it takes a lot more setup. Whereas with a skit, you can see the whole thing. With a movie, you can see the whole thing. Whereas you don't have to describe the whole scene in order to nail that joke ending.
Home Alone.
Exactly, Home Alone. That is super hilarious because of all the hijinks that happen that you can see. But can you imagine trying to explain all those hijinks in words? It'd be so much harder. It's not that it's impossible; it's just a lot of work. Um, Speaking of which, the first thing I know we're going to talk about is tone. You got to make sure that your tone is humorous from the get go. If you're trying to go with a spooky humorous, you can do that too. It's called gallows humor when you have overtone with a humorous undertone. However, you do have to be careful with that. I wouldn't say go too spooky because if you're just going like hardcore horror and then all of a sudden you're like, haha, lols, everyone's gonna be like, what? But if you're going like lightly spooky and then, uh-oh, something bad happens, it's funny, that kind of gives you more of a Scooby-Doo kind of vibe, right? Where it's you've got some scariness, but you've also got some hijinks and jokes. So you got to be careful with your vibe. You got to make sure that your tone is well set from the beginning. All right. Next thing that is helpful is quirky characters, like for example Scooby Doo, or if you've seen Psych, Sean and Gus. They're both great examples of characters that are very, very quirky and very, very odd. Having characters that are just in general not your usual average everyday person is going to help. For example, if you have an average everyday cheerleader, that's not going to be interesting. But if you have a cheerleader who's like, ew, gross, dead things, and then she's surrounded by zombies, that's kind of hilarious. Because then she's constantly being like, oh my gosh, everything's gross, because zombies. So it's so much funnier. Whereas if she was just your normal cheerleader, she'd just be like, ugh, zombies. And that wouldn't be funny. That would just be like, I don't like you. And so you characters have funny things about them naturally. Silly, goofy people, or just do things that can be perceived as dumb. An example, for example, in the show Psych with Sean and Gus, even if you haven't seen it, I'm going to explain it, so it doesn't matter. There's this one where they're trying to catch a mummy that's supposedly alive. Guess what? It's a realistic fiction show, so there's obviously of course, Gus believes in the supernatural. So as a result, the second that he goes, that Sean goes, it's a mummy, Gus literally like runs for his life, like for freaking ever, and you're sitting there going, dude, stop screaming and running. Clearly the mummy's dead and not actually alive, but he's still screaming and running for like 2 minutes. And that's funny because of the fact that you realize that you isn't alive, but Gus is too much of a scaredy cat, so he just runs.
As he hasn't even listened to that person.
Exactly. He doesn't even listen to Sean, who's like, dude, the mummy's dead. And he's just literally running, does not care. So
he's too scared to.
Exactly.
He's so scared he's dead.
Exactly. So characters that are quirky or silly can be extra fun, or even just characters that are very true to themselves. I heard a line last night on one of the shows I was watching where they were saying, "Oh my gosh, dude, and there's a sandwich called a croquette." So the guy goes, "Wait, that's a sandwich, right?" And he's like, "No, it's a monster." You're thinking of the sandwich. So you can also have people who are just like obsessed with food, like that guy, or you can have people who are scaredy cats, or you can have people who, like Gus also has problems with in Psych, are super, super problematic at the sight of blood or guts or anything like that. And so being, a murder detective, that's kind of a problem. He always wants to vomit. And that's kind of funny because we're all sitting there going, dude, why did you go into the murder detective agency if you're seeing blood all the time and you want to vomit the sight of blood? Bad choices. And so having those characters that just make you naturally want to laugh is going to add a layer of comedy just organically, which feels really good. You don't even have to try hard with that because the characters are just being themselves and it makes it funny. All right, next thing is know the tropes and cliches of your genre in order to add comedic fodder. So tropes and cliches are things like, for example, in the Scooby Doo movies, they have the trope of at the end of the movie, they always take off their mask, right? And so in a few of the episodes, they make fun of that by having two or three masks on. So that way it's like boing, 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 pulling off five different masks. And so if you have a trope or a cliche, something that you do a lot or that is seen a lot in your genre, then totally make fun of it. That is a great way to add comedy in there. If you know something is just naturally like annoyingly done a lot, like for example, song in Disney movies is so yes, but that's why it's funny when they make fun of it. That's why when they make fun of it and they're like, "Ugh, you're not gonna burst into song, are you?" Everyone's like, "Yeah," and they're able to laugh because of the fact that it's done so often. Yes,
and it gets annoying.
It does get annoying.
I see a few days ago I was watching that movie too, and
Yeah.
then they started playing some music, and then every character was like, "Oh, we stepped into a musical."
Exactly with lines like that where you're making fun of things from other shows and other tropes and things like that can make people be like, oh my gosh, that is so annoying, I love this, like the fact that you're making fun of this makes me laugh. And so those kinds of things can again add more organic comedic tone to your stuff. All right, next thing is surprise and drastically different than your expectations kind of things. A great example of this is Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Again, if you haven't seen it, I'll just explain it. So, there's this beast that has been rumored to consume flesh and whole people, and they're like, we're all gonna die, it's this horrible beast. And then they see a bunny rabbit. Boing, boing. And they're all like, why? And the whole audience is going, they're afraid of a bunny. And then the bunny starts attacking them. And then it's even more funny because you're like, oh my gosh, that bunny just bit his head off. and so your shock is making you laugh. Sometimes being surprised by something just makes people laugh. Be careful that it's not too surprising, because if it's too surprising, it actually can lead the opposite direction where the person's just like, what? So you gotta have the right level of surprise. Yes.
I'm sort of doing that in one of my books. Like
Mhm.
the wild animals, tigers and lions.
Yeah, yeah.
They're afraid of this animal that wants to rule everybody and all that. But when they meet it, it's like this miniature dog.
Especially because that is so true of tiny dogs. They act like they own the world. They're like, guess what? I'm a tiny dog. And you're like, why? But yes.
So there are some like other things that make it funny, like after like it's a part of a book where the main characters discover this part,
Yeah.
and then the other and one of our main character also looking for clues. Who's like, guess what, guys? I figured out that this happened.
Yes, that can always be super funny when everyone else is like, we've totally had it figured out for the last couple chapters, and they're like, guess what, guys? I figured it out, and it's like, really? It took you this long? Like, what the heck? So
and if it happens multiple times,
yes, it can be very funny to play up on those kinds of like surprise factors where you're like, okay, wait, what? All right, next thing is know your age range. For example, if you are writing for little kids, adding in a ton of fart jokes, they're going to love that. They're probably jokes. But if you do all fart jokes for your adult novel, the adults are going to put the book down. Or at least most will. Only about 1% will probably keep reading.
Keep reading, wondering why.
Why are fart jokes?
Why are they doing this?
But yeah, so try to know your audience. Having one or two fart jokes in your adult novel is fine. Having one or two complex jokes in your kid's book is fine. But having all complex jokes in a book meant for little tiny fart jokes in a book meant for really adults, it's not going to work well. So you got to know your flavor of humor of your audience, because you can also know that based on the genre too. For example, if you're doing a book that is based on a kid being trapped in a video game, doing video game humor is going to hit amazingly well. But doing humor about romance novels, not going to land.
what do you mean humor in video games?
Well, it's just if you're a video gamer, you probably know the types of jokes that video gamers like.
Like what?
We can talk more about that after.
I
But
actually do remember one from Pokeball game. It was right after like you beat them, and it was
Which
just
game?
out of Pokemon Center. It was just silver, and it's just like I'm too young.
I'm too young for that.
It was so funny and relatable.
But then, see, also make fun of other video games, and that can make it extra funny for a video gamer who's like, "Oh, I've played that game. I know what you're talking about. That is so funny because of the fact that I've played that game." Kind of like we were just talking about Zelda. If you made fun of that and the guy's like running away from a boulder this whole time, and he's like, "This feels familiar," anyone who's played that game is gonna be like, "I get the joke," and that's what I mean. Like making fun of the same things that they would understand and resonate with. So you got to make sure that you're in tune with that audience. If you don't really know that audience well, get to know the audience better. Get to know
Why
what
does
they
my
know
phone
about.
keep falling out of my pocket?
Honestly, phones are not meant for pockets. I firmly believe that. They fall out of my pocket all the time too. Anyway,
So where am I supposed to put them?
On the ceiling.
honestly, I always just hold it in my hand because it's so bad. But anyway, pockets are the worst, but also the best. Pockets are pockets. Anyway, so arguments can also be made funny. You might say like arguments being funny, what? But they can be funny. For once again, we're gonna go back to a scenario in Psych. This happens a lot where Gus is like super scaredy cat, like I said, and then Sean is like, "Guess what? We're gonna take on this case," and he's like, "Nope, I don't do ghosts, Sean. I don't do ghosts." And then Sean is like, "Yes," and then they start acting like 2-year-olds, and they're literally like, "Yes, no, yes, no, yes," and you're like, "What are you, 3? You're adults." And so it's extra funny because even though they're having an argument, you as the watcher are just like, "What is happening here?"
What's in their head?
Exactly, like what is going on?
They're first above sharing brain cells.
Exactly, they're sharing the brain cell, and so you can even make arguments funny in a comedy and things like that. Okay, next thing that we're going to talk about is the rule of 3. This is the type of joke where you have 3 things happen. For example, the guy goes to the door and then there's nothing there. It's like a tree branch or something. He goes, there's a knock at the door. He goes, there's a knock at the door, and he opens the door, doesn't realize it's not a tree branch, and there's a killer clown, and he shuts the door, and then all of a sudden he goes, and everyone laughs because they're like, "What? How'd you not notice the killer clown?" But he's just so fed up with the tree branch that he assumes it was a tree branch. Again. And so, but the reason the rule of 3 works so well is because you know it's coming. It's because people have set up the rule of 3 and so many times that it's just the perfect way to demonstrate this joke. It's like the classic knock knock orange who, knock knock orange who, knock knock banana orange, you glad I didn't say but orange. Anyway, or whatever the joke goes. But the point is you do it 3 times. You do it twice normally, and then the 3rd time something absurd and insane happens, or you say something crazy. So that is a great way to land humor as well. Should you do it all the time? No, but used sparingly, it can be a very good tool. Next thing is running jokes. So, for example, if a specific character is constantly, like Scooby-Doo, eating sandwiches and constantly losing said sandwiches, and constantly being like, "Gosh, why did the monster eat my sandwich, dang it?" That can be extra funny because of the fact that it happens every single episode or every single movie, and it makes people be extra funny.
If you do so much, like Team Rocket with Pokemon, it gets so annoying that
this is true.
It just makes it worse, not better.
I agree. And that's the danger of the running joke. So, the benefit of the running joke is that you always have something to fall back on to make people laugh. The danger of it is that if you keep falling back on that, eventually the joke is not going to land.
It's going to hurt you more than it benefits.
Yeah. So, with a running joke, I would say maybe only use it once every other book or something like that instead of doing it like every chapter. A great example of this is Percy Jackson's 2nd series, the whatever it was called. I'm tired. The secondary series, the one with Jason and all those guys, where Jason keeps constantly having bricks thrown at him. It only happens 3 times in the series, but it happens 3 times. As a result, it is considered a running joke, even though there are 6 books. That only means it happens about every other book, and yet it's enough times that everyone starts being like, "Lol, Jason should just marry." Anyway, so exactly, It makes people laugh. It makes people funny. But that's because they only did it 3 times in a 6-book series. If they'd done it every time in every book, it probably would have gotten lame. But because it was only 3 times out of 6, it's still funny. All right. Next thing, exaggeration or understatements. So, exaggeration or understatements can be used to great effect when people get frustrated about it, where they're like, the fish was this big, and they're like, no, it's that big, and he's like, yeah, I have a picture, and you're just like, why? Why are we arguing over this? And so different things like exaggeration or understatements can be incredibly funny if used correctly in the right context. All right, and last but most certainly not least, some people love this type of humor, some people hate this type of humor, so that's why I left it for last, because it is risky gamble kind of thing where it's like the people who love it in all caps, but the people who hate it also hate it in all caps. So it's very divisive. And that is uncomfy settings / situations. You've all seen these before, you know, where the guy is wearing like something crazy and then his wife is like, yoo-hoo, I'm home early, and he's like, oh crap, I'm wearing a clown. Runs to the closet, he's hiding in the closet, and she's all like, why are you in there, dear? And he's all like, I am here because I forgot my tie. And she's like, well, then why don't I open the door? And he's like, no, don't open the door. And some people find that very hilarious. Other people are just like, why? This is so frustrating. And so you can use that to great effect, though. Some people love that kind of humor where it's literally just like the train wreck kind of humor where you can't look away and it's so uncomfortable that it makes you uncomfortable, but at the same time, that's kind of way it makes you laugh. Yeah.
I feel like that happens a lot in Spider-Man.
Yeah. yes, there are a lot of that. I think my favorite line though from that I actually did like, even though I don't like this type of humor as much, is one of the Spider-Mans with Andrew Garfield, where he stuffs his Spider-Man suit away and then jumps under the covers because he's not wearing anything but his underwear. And then his grandmother goes, what did you wash last week? Everything turned pink and blue. And he's like, I washed the American flag. And she's like, you don't wash the American flag. And he's like, what? It's like, why? So things like that can be incredibly funny, but it depends on how they're used. It does depend on situation. And so, or even things like in the newest Miles Morales Spider-Man stuff, where he's like, I know you snuck out last night, Miles. Play dumb. Who's Miles? Not that dumb. And then he runs off. And it's like this kind of internal dialogue arguing with himself about how dumb he should act and then pretend and then acts too dumb. So yeah, things like that can be funny and can be used well, but they can be just taken to an absurd alternative where you're just like, oh my gosh, if you just talked to each other, this wouldn't be a problem, but instead you're running around both avoiding each other because you don't know that you're hiding the exact same Christmas gift. Ha! You know? And so sometimes it makes you want to tear your hair out, and other times like that, it makes you go, so it all depends on various factors. But those are all great ways to instill comedy in your writing. Do you guys have any questions about comedy or humor in your writing? Yes.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Comment's good.
Another type of humor that I personally like is absurd phobias.
Yes, that can be fun. That can be fun.
I have one of my characters who is like deathly afraid of chickens.
There you go. You can have things like that. Or even
How can you be afraid of chickens?
surprisingly, there actually is an actual fear of like feathers and birds. I don't know why. But
Oh,
anyway.
yeah, my grandma's afraid of feathers.
Yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, it can be very fun to play with absurd fears. I know that I watched an episode of a TV show the other day that actually was really funny because of the fact that he was like, I hate clowns, I'm super afraid of clowns, and then it's like, guess what? There's this killer clown going around, and he's like, I told you clowns are bad! And his brother's just like, clowns aren't bad just because we ran into one killer clown. But anyway.
I hate clowns.
And he's like, well, I have a reason to hate clowns now. So it can be funny when you have absurd fears and then purposely like add things in there. I actually do have a coworker who isn't afraid of chickens, but she always classically says, it's still one of my favorite funny lines so far, where she's like, chickens are related to raptors, therefore I don't trust them. And I'm just like, what?
That is a valid point.
But anyway, so you can just say have absurd things. Yep. But anyway, so you can just say absurd things, believe, and people will laugh about it because you're like, what? And so it can be very interesting and fun way to do humor is absurd fears or absurd beliefs or absurd like myths or things that they like follow and you're like that doesn't even make sense. And they're like, "Well, it works." So excuse you.
Like make a connection with something good, but they don't like it with something bad.
Yeah, exactly. And just make it as crazy as possible. Like every year that we decorate the Christmas tree, a raccoon dies. And so it's like, therefore, we cannot decorate a Christmas tree. And it's like, that makes no sense. And that's what makes it funny.
There's like millions of raccoons in the world.
Yep, and they're like, but if we don't, all raccoons will be saved. And you're like, what? Like,
That doesn't change anything.
exactly. But that's why it makes it so funny, is you're just like, why are you crazy?
Unless every time you decorate a Christmas tree, this rando doesn't like,
Who doesn't like the Christmas tree happens to kill a raccoon?
He just purposely kills a raccoon every
How
time.
dare they decorate their Christmas tree, murders raccoon. Anyway, so I completely agree. Absurd things like that can be really fun.
Yeah, and also unexpected humor.
Yes.
That might just be me. I just love random unexpected things.
Exactly, like the Monty Python bunny thing, where it's just like you don't see it coming. You're just like, okay, here are my expectations, and then you have something else happen, and you're like, what? Where did that come from? So
Like,
I agree. Unexpected is a very good way to go.
Like if there's somebody who teases somebody a lot, like there's a spider on your shoulder, and they're like, oh, like
Then there's an actual spider on their shoulder.
He's like, no, there's an actual spider on your shoulder. He's like, I'm not falling for
Exactly,
it.
I'm not falling
But
for
then
this
it
time.
bites him, and it's like, ah!
Exactly. He's like, dude, I tried. Yes, exactly. But anyway, so any other comments or questions about writing humor? Yes.
So I have this character who has like this slang that's like his own. He's like, oh, spirits, and then like
Mhm.
like the other character is like, what's that mean? And he's like, it's a slang. And then this other character is like, you are the only one who uses that.
Yes, it can also be funny when characters make up things and act like they're popular. A great example of this, I believe it's from Mean Girls. Anyway, wouldn't recommend it. It wasn't exactly a great show. But very similar thing where one of the girls is like, oh my gosh, that's so fetch. And everyone's like, stop saying fetch. It's not a catchphrase or a good word, like any sort of popular word. You're trying to make it popular, but it's just not. Like,
It's popularly annoying.
exactly. And so you can do things like that.
It mainly made me think of James and semantics.
Semantics, yes, where he's just purposely refuses to learn the word. So you can,
use it all the time.
yeah, uses it 24/7. Anyway, in 99% of the time, the right context. So I suspiciously wonder if he actually does secretly know the meaning. But anyway, yes, I agree, and especially with funny accents, you can very much make fun of that. For example, a lot of people make fun of Irish being English because there's so many slangs and so many like derivatives that by the time you get done with it, if a person is speaking true Irish English at you cannot understand a word they're saying. And so sometimes making fun of accents or other things like that can be incredibly funny. So I completely agree.
Like British people say aluminum.
Aluminium, yes.
The character will like catch up on it and like say this line too, and he's like,
He does it too now. And he's like, yes.
I'm not crazy. I promise I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Yes.
something that thoughts. I think that would be fit into comedies if you play like if the world setting is medieval or Renaissance or something like that, or in the future.
Yeah.
And then they say something like, I don't know, if it's in the past, like, oh, of course the world is flat. Of course it's not round. Imagine if it was round. It
No,
would be
exactly.
ridiculous.
Commenting on things that are actually real in the future are very funny. I'm actually currently watching a show that's set in the 1800s. Well, technically it just changed in the 1900s. It was like 1880 when the show started. But anyway, point being is that they're in the 18/1900s, and literally all the time they'll say things like the idea of a compressed meat tube called a hot dog becoming popular, that's so dumb. And it's like, Just sitting here like, okay.
Stupid. Who would ever do that?
Exactly. They'll say things like that, and you're just like, yeah. So that kind of humor can be very funny, where they're like, everyone knows the Earth is flat. Anyone who says like the Earth is like a square or like a ball, it's so dumb. A ball. Can you imagine? Like, just start making fun of futuristic things. That can be very funny. Or alternatively, if you're in the far, far future and you want to make fun of stuff that happened in the past, and they're like, what is this, 2008 or something like that? And like, they can make fun of that too. And so having time-based humor, absolutely. Super funny. All right. I'm going to turn the video off so we have some time to do things. As per usual, I'm going to give you a heads up on the contest. The next contest is due on December 20th, so you still have plenty of time. It is a first chapter contest. The only thing we are not accepting is fan fiction. So go crazy with whatever you'd like to do, as long as it's not fan fiction. We are fine with fan fiction with all the other contests. It's just for this one, we specifically want original stories only. With that being said, feel free to go nuts, go ham, have a great time. The limit is 3,000 words, and as usual, no like insane material that makes us go gross and like too gory and whatnot. But otherwise, have a fun time. Please submit your first chapter. We would love to see it, and we will not only give you feedback on it, but I am excited to see who's going to be the grand prize winner coming up in January, because we do vote on all the stories throughout the year and then give them a score out of 1 through 10 as to how much we liked it, 10 being the best entry we've seen, 1 being like, I won, but at the same time it's not as good as some of the others. And then whichever one gets the highest score out of the year is going to get a $50 gift card. And then the adult runner-up and the teen runner-up are going to get a $25 gift card. So, exciting. All right. All right, so thank you guys so much. I'm going to turn off the video now, and we can write.